There are friendship problems and then there's bullying. And we've got to talk about those two things really quite separately. So I think that we really need to understand that some of the real bullying that takes place happens right under our noses with people that are included and were liked by the group.
Hello and welcome to Separate Bathrooms. I'm Daddo.
I'm Cam. Daddo. Just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, just in case we have different last names.
Indeed.
We would like to acknowledge the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay our respects to the elders, both past and present.
Today we're discussing a subject that has been very much a part of our lives for a number of years. We've got two daughters that have had their fair share of difficulty navigating their teen years, and sometimes it's been really painful.
Yeah.
We know we're not alone as parents of teenagers. We know most teenagers go through it. What was your experience going through your teen years? Yeah.
Look, I think I don't know, does any teen girl escape teenage years unscathed of some kind of distress? I don't know.
Some kind of distress for whatever reason it is, if it's bullying or if it's just ego or whatever it is.
Insecurity. I was a very insecure teenage girl. I was lucky I had two girlfriends, so we were the three musketeers. So I had two girlfriends that I was really close with, and that they were really special to me. That helped a lot to get me through my teen years. Though I remember feeling also lonely a lot of the time. Insecure, unworthy, slightly anxious. Am I doing the right thing? Or all of that kind of thing. I feel like, and this is what's so interesting about our guests that we're about to have on, I'm so curious about teenagers today. What's the difference? We're talking to Dr Mary Kaspar.
Yep, she's written a book. It's called The Popular Girls, Helping Your Daughter with Adolescent Power Struggles. She's a clinical psychologist, a researcher, author, and a mother to three young adult daughters, and has a dog named Alfie. Let's bring her into the bathroom. Dr. Mary Kaspar.
Well, we've already done a little fabulous intro on you and who you are and this book that we really want to dive into today. So we have two daughters of our own that have one still in her teens, and we've kind of run the gamut of all sorts of things with both of them. So we have not read your book, but I know that that's why you're here. You're going to explain it all to us, and we're going to mine your intelligence and your research for all the sorts of things that you can tell us about teenage
We're looking
girls.
for some wisdom, Dr. Mary.
I think there'll be plenty of it. There'll be plenty of it.
Yeah. So, Mary, what inspired you to write this book? Was it your three daughters?
Well, there's actually quite a big backstory, or a long backstory, not a big backstory, but I'm one of 7 children. I'm the second eldest, and I have 5 sisters. So I've had a really long history of being with girls, really enjoying the company of girls, so really loving my sisters and their friends. And then I was very young when I met my husband, and I've actually been with him for 32 years. I know that you two have been together for over 30 years as well. So
that's
we're
right.
We're 31. So you were married in 1990, were you?
Actually, we started dating in 1990 and then were married in 1995.
Oh, okay. So you've been together. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. There you go. Just being technical here.
No competition, right?
No competition.
And I actually started dating him when I was 15 years old, and we had children very young. So my daughters are now in their mid-20s. So actually they range, like they've sort of got a bit of a range there. It's about 6 years between them. So I had sisters, I had daughters, so I became very interested in girls and how those social relationships played out, because I've I've got a doctorate in clinical psychology. So from when I was 17 years old is when I first started studying psychology. And once I finished university, I started a private practice pretty much straight away and developed group programs for girls. And when I was working with them was when the idea for the book really came together, because I would be teaching them cognitive behavioural strategies. And those strategies are about positive psychology. They're about noticing that the way that you think about things is related to how you feel, understanding how, you can communicate maybe a little bit better, how you can problem solve difficulties. And the girls kept saying to me, but you don't understand that won't work because that person's popular. Or they started having all of differentiating what I was teaching them with sort of saying to me, you don't really know what's going on. So I looked into it a little bit more, and that's when I learned about the two different kinds of popularity, and I learned about power dynamics. And that was sort of the moment where I thought, I think we all need to know a little bit more about this, because at the same time, it was becoming really obvious that loneliness is a really big problem with our young people. Yeah. And believe it or not, emerging adulthood, which is sort of the end of adolescence, is a high-risk period for loneliness. And you might think, how is that possible? They're embedded in social systems. They're often, going to school, or they're still living at home. They seem to be surrounded by people, but they're reporting that they're really, really lonely, because loneliness is about a subjective experience of being alone, not being with people.
Gosh.
Teenage brain.
You have said, my goal is to dismantle harmful status hierarchies and social cruelty. It is to challenge the misguided notion of success that is breeding loneliness in our youth. This is exactly what you're just saying, and instead move girls towards connection and well-being. I just think that is what a beautiful goal to have, and what beautiful work that you're doing. I'd love for you to just sort of unpack a little bit, like, firstly, what are harmful status hierarchies and social cruelty? Can you explain those two terms?
Yeah, sure. So what the girls were telling me, and then what I started learning more about, was that sometimes what happens is that social rewards in adolescence is really, really, really important to young people. So you'll see that part of adolescent brain changes are moving people towards their peers and away from their family. So peers are really, really important, but it's also a time when status really seems to matter more. So status matters to all of us, at different times, to different levels, but particularly in adolescence, it seems to be really rewarding. And what can happen is that when adolescents seek that kind of status, it's about that they're aiming to put themselves above other people. And there are very specific tools that are effective at doing that. And sometimes some of those tools involve relational aggression. So they can have really, really high levels of pro-social behaviours. And that increases status. But they can also, at the same time, engage in a kind of exclusionary behaviour, because when you are distinguished from some people, that can sometimes put you in a place of privilege. So when I talk about status hierarchies, I'm talking about who puts themselves over other people and the impact of that on the people that are often at the bottom of the status hierarchy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about our daughters in that regard too. Within those groups of girls, there's always the top dog. There's the top girl that calls the shots, and there's the girls that just go along with, and you don't challenge the top dog as a girl. Like, I know Bodhi talks a lot about that, from her last school, and when if you've got two top dogs in each group, they don't like each other. In different
was that the case with you, honey, at school? Was there? I mean, because I'm sort of looking. This is nothing new, Mary, in terms of, I mean, my sister went through it. My mum was reflected on that when she was in school in the 50s, you know. Was that you too? Was there a top dog?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I was hearing from the girls was that although this has been around forever, status hierarchies, and you see it in all aspects of life, and it's not just contained to school environments and adolescence, but I think it is more prominent during that time because of the changes in the brain, that it becomes more obvious until people learn to, you know, control those kinds of impulses a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think unpacking it is really important because I was being told that nobody was really hearing what was going on. And to get to be top dog, you have to have incredibly good social skills and high social intelligence. Right. So what the girls were telling me was that to be top dog looks at different things in different eras and in different cultures. So the girls that were establishing themselves at the top of the status hierarchy were engaging in really high levels of pro-social behaviours with a lot of people and parents and peers and teachers. And the relational aggression that was happening is very much hidden. So you think about it as it's sort of like a coercive control that happens. And girls are more affected than this by boys, is what it seems to be something that's being teased apart. But don't get me wrong, it's affecting boys as well.
Yeah,
so
sure.
The tools that are used are really quite effective at increasing status. So those tools are typically gossip. So you can find a way of making somebody unattractive to be around very sneakily, and act as if you've got nothing to do with it. You're just passing on something that you heard, but let's all remember it and not invite them to the next party. Yeah. And also, subtle belittling behaviours. So they talk about gateway behaviours. So things like when a girl talks to you, just looking straight through her, so ignoring her or rolling your eyes. So subtle ways of belittling, which in effect actually increases them. So if you think about it as like a step ladder or a vertical kind of scenario, that in the status hierarchies, they all start to find their place. And so you talk about the top dog, and how do you get there? And what the research shows is that you have both, typically, so I'm speaking in general terms here, both high levels of very, very positive pro-social behaviours teed with covert high levels of aggressive behaviours. And so it's about really drawing attention to the tools that get there, because it's often so sneaky that the social group buys into it. And that is actually part of why it's called relational aggression, because it's somebody having the capacity to turn a social group against you and successfully knock down your status. So it's actually successful. So if we've known about it for so long, why, and it's been around for a really long time, why isn't it being unpacked a little bit more? And why aren't we really aware of the specific tools so that we can identify it rather than reward it? So know what the tools are and know what the function of it is. Because if the function is to be top dog, that's actually not good. And I can talk to you about that later as well, because that was really big aha moments for me, is that to be the top dog is not good either. It's not a pathway for well-being. So in fact, wanting to be the top dog is what we can refer to as a miswanting. So wanting something that we think will make us happier than it really will, or contribute more to our well-being than what it really will.
I'm getting fired up as you're saying all this stuff, because as Ali said, we've got two daughters, and I watch my sister go through a really difficult time, and I'm younger than her. I could see it. I see it happening with her when she was like 14, 15, 16. And then watching our two daughters go through their version of it. And I know that they were complicit in certain parts of it as well. Like, even though at some point they were a victim, at other points they might have been more of the covert aggressor. I know that. I found it very hard as a dad to hold my tongue in moments because I can see it. I hear the stories, and Ali and I talk about it, and we do unpack it a bit about what's going on, and it's like, it's really frustrating seeing how upset your kid gets, right? And who the perpetrator is. That person who's the perpetrator, who's the top dog, as you're saying here. I guess my question is, I was basically venting. Let's be honest about that. The question really is, why is it just a need for power? Or why are they being mean? Why are they doing this? I suppose I'm just asking you as an expert. I've got my own feelings about it. But why do you think it is that person who's so hell-bent on having the power, why do they feel the need to do that?
I think that there are many facets to why this happens. I think that there are, in our culture, we value status. So so that there's a lot of encouragement for doing what it takes to be at the top. So I think that's kind of one aspect of it. But I think also that possibly it's a different kind of mindset. So I'll talk to you about vertical and horizontal relationships in a minute, because that's the mindset that I think people that are really invested in status hierarchies get caught up in. And what we know about well-being is actually developing more horizontal relationships. So that's one part of it. But another part of it is that I don't think they're getting their really fundamental needs met. And another part of it, and this is where it gets really complicated, is that there are friendship problems and then there's bullying. And we've got to talk about those two things really quite separately. So when you say, why are they being mean? If it's a friendship problem, it may very well be that they don't have the skills for communicating, that they don't know how to problem solve some other way to do it. So they try and get their needs met in a roundabout way, and that they're making mistakes because of that. That brain development that we talk about, they might not have the skills and they've got really big emotions and they don't know how to do it. So that's how it comes out, right?
Yeah, right.
So, and that's why I think that we need to, be really kind and give people the benefit of the doubt. But if it is repeated behaviour, if there are power differentials already in place between the person who's doing it and somebody else, and that power differential can come from age, or from having a group gang up is another power differential, or it can even just be popularity. So if they're already top dog, they're much more powerful because they've got the social inclusion already, and targeting somebody who's a lot less powerful is about having a power differential in the first place. And then we start to move more into bullying. And I think that historically we've been really aware of overt acts of aggression and saying, no, that's bullying. But I think that we really need to understand that some of the real bullying that takes place happens right under our noses with people that are included and well liked by the group. So when it becomes bullying, that is not normal adolescent behaviour. So that means that something's wrong. And for somebody to grow really well, they talk about that they need experiences of competence, they need experiences of autonomy and relatedness. And something has gone wrong in how they relate to people if their focus is on popularity, which you can think about as being an external outcome rather than an intrinsic motivator, that something is something is not right there.
what's so fascinating to me as you're talking is that I know women my age, so in their 50s, who are still affected by having experienced what you're talking about. Women that are saying, I remember when I was just chucked out of this group. I don't know why, but one girl decided she didn't like me and that was it. And they were my friends and they just all turned their back on me and I was ousted. And they're still, to this day, so deeply hurt because it was at such a vulnerable time and it sort of left this everlasting scar for them. So, being able to work with teens at this point is going to give us healthier relationships as we grow into older women, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And so what can also happen is that some people, because they're rewarded, remember I talked about vertical relationships, that when you're at the top, you're actually quite rewarded, that they actually carry that behaviour forward in their life.
Yes.
But because they're older and they're wiser and they've had all of these experiences of engaging in pro-social behaviour, they're really, really good at it. But ultimately it's about staying up here. And then there are people that were put to the bottom and that really affects their mental health long term. And it shows that, like being subject to bullying or relational aggression has impacts on mental health, physical health, and future social relationships. So it actually sets them up to have social failures in the future. So you're absolutely right. And that's why I like to focus on adolescents, because if they can get the right learnings, out of these mistakes and out of these, then you can actually change to what could be referred to as like horizontal relationships. So the mindset that I'm trying to promote is moving away from vertical to horizontal. Yeah. So in vertical, you can think about that as being a flight of stairs. And it comes from a scarcity mindset. There's only so much room for everybody on every level of these stairs, right? So you've got to do whatever it takes to keep working up the stairs and to be top dog. And part of that might be kicking other people down. There's not enough room for everybody up here, right? Yeah. Or otherwise you're not special and you haven't, you're not successful. So this is coming down to what a rating of success is that I think that we need to be changing. Whereas when you think about horizontal relationships, you can think about there being a big field, a big flat bit of land, a plain, and there are many, many people walking there. Some people are walking in front of you, some people are walking behind you, some people are to the left and to the right, but you're walking together as equals. And you're inherently worthy, and there's nothing that can change that, even though the pace that you walk might be different, the way that you walk might be different. It's a completely different mindset. It's a new perspective, and it challenges some of or a lot of what social media is telling young people. And unfortunately, sometimes parents also get confused about what good parenting is. Like, to be a good parent, maybe we should, we've got to keep, pushing our kid to do more and be more. And of course we want human beings to be the best version of themselves. But what's becoming very, very clear is that if they don't know how to relate to people properly, they are going to become unwell. The people that they're relating to are going to become unwell, and that's going to impact on all aspects of their lives. So really thinking about people as being comrades.
Yeah. I love this analogy, this vertical and horizontal, because also to me, being on the vertical, if you're up the top of the vertical, you've got a long way to fall. And that can hurt. And that can be as destructive, I think, as the person down the bottom of the vertical who's trying to work up and push people off. So it's like, get rid of that vertical and create the horizontal.
And that's the connection to others then, isn't it? That would stop the loneliness, because if you're walking on a field with everyone, it's not nearly as lonely as if you're standing on the top pillar all on your own.
Yeah, because if you're up on a pedestal, that's a lonely place to be if you're on your own, right?
Absolutely, and it's an exhausting place to be, and it's a disconnecting place to be. So I think we all know people, who have been there and then fallen. But I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying or confuse it with me in any way saying that there is something wrong with doing your absolute best. And in fact,
no, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, no, but I just don't want anybody who's listening to this to say that I don't think that kids should be, or that young people should be striving to, do the best they can in their subjects and I'm not knocking any of that. I'm just saying that you can actually achieve much more by changing your perspective about human beings and understanding that a lot of the stuff that's up here or down here isn't real, like it's often contingent on external outcomes, which are often out of our control. So it's about making a decision about who you want to be and about, prioritising those really, really good, healthy, deep relationships without having to, do that from a kind of selfish viewpoint.
As Cam's saying, we were having a conversation last night with our 16-year-old, and I asked her, do you find that your friends and the people around you have compassion and empathy? And she immediately said no. She said, no, I find that's lacking. And that was coming from, a teenager. I know that's part of your work as well, and I believe it's in your book too. Is the youth of today losing compassion, or is it being masked by something? Is that social media? What's happening with compassion and empathy with kids today?
Well, I think that there is some indication that the more we focus on external markers of success, the less we focus on those really, like having compassion for others. And so it's about which direction you're going. So one of the lessons that I do talk to young people about a lot is developing self-compassion, because in a lot of ways you have to have self-compassion before you really know how to have compassion for others. And self-compassion is an incredibly equalising kind of tool, and it's a superpower. And it involves, there are three components to it. There's mindfulness, which is the ability to be present, to observe, describe, non-judgmentally, to see things and feel things as they are. There's common humanity. And that's really important, because that's about the horizontal relationships again. And that's about saying that when I experience suffering, I'm not alone. So it's about understanding that we are all connected, human beings are connected, and not saying to other people, that thing that's happening to you over there while I'm over here, but rather understanding that we share so many of our experiences and so much of our suffering. And so so it's not pity. So self-compassion is not pity. It's about shared humanity. Yeah. And then it's about self-kindness. So it's about the ability to treat yourself as you treat your best friend and care about your well-being and whether you're suffering, and to do things that can actively alleviate that. And the thing about self-compassion is that you don't give yourself self-compassion when you're suffering to get rid of your suffering. You give yourself compassion because you are suffering. So it's sort of this kind of a viewpoint that really lets young people connect with other people, so connect with themselves and treat themselves really well. And the outcomes are really great for things like it activates the care system, so there's physical health, there's more learning, people grow. It's something that can be applied to people that make social mistakes, so the adolescents that have maybe done a wrong thing by a friend, because when you apply self-compassion, you can then think more clearly and you're more likely to take responsibility for what you do. And if you've been treated badly, it lets you take care of yourself, and without automatically buying into that, that you're worthless.
And is that, as parents, that's what we need to teach our child, or is that already something that you feel is innate in a child?
So I think the ability for compassion is 100% innate, but I think how much you foster that can be taught as parents. And I think that maybe one of the first things that parents can do is learn to treat themselves with self-compassion, because self-compassion is an antidote for shame, for self-criticism, for social comparison. It's, so once you treat yourself with compassion, and you can then model that as well to your child, but also having conversations around it. So to use self-compassion, you have to have emotional intelligence. You have to have empathy, which you referred to earlier, which involves understanding what another person's feeling and being able to communicate that understanding. So, and often we do learn about relationships through our current relationships. And that's why another lesson that I do with parents is about attachment style, because there's a whole body of literature around secure attachment, insecure attachment, that is around the other superpower, which is connection. And I think that self-compassion and compassion is taught through connection. So if I were to ask you, Cam and Elle, do you have a memory of a time when you really, really felt loved? Can you access that memory? And can you think maybe how old you were, maybe where you were, what was happening, and what it felt like in your body?
Yeah. I mean, the first word is peace, just absolutely at peace and relaxed.
Yeah, I think that's
Relaxed.
where I'm going
Yeah,
to.
my whole body is relaxed.
Calm.
Yeah, calm and peaceful. Yeah.
And not wanting for anything, not having to push for anything. It's just like, I can just be.
And without expectation. Like that's the big thing. I always talk about this being with my grandparents, because that's where I felt the most love, and I was able to just be me without any expectation. I just was loved for me and without any other needs that anyone else needed from me. And that's my most, I talk about that memory a lot, actually.
That's a really special memory. And the reason why I wanted to sort of show you or take you there is because it's often described as a place where you feel soothed, which overlaps with compassion, a place where you feel safe, where you feel secure, you feel good about yourself, and where you feel seen, like really seen for who you are authentically. And so when you have a parent, or I know, Elle, you talked about a grandparent, that does that to you, it changes you. It changes your template for what you understand is a real or a healthy, or, a relation, what a healthy or meaningful relationship is. And it helps you be the best version of yourself, because there aren't those external outcomes. So, Elle, I think you use the word expectation.
Yeah.
Not having those expectations, which maybe we can assume is, how you're meant to perform. So it starts to separate you as a human being walking on that flat plane and being seen versus being recognised, or expectations for moving up there. So the ability for a parent to do that can completely change a young person's life and trajectory for their relationships moving forward. It changes the template through that modelling, through that experience. They start to be able to be the best version of themselves. They learn better. They choose different friends. They have different relationships. So it's really, and they've got a template. They've got that role modelling about what to do. So that's another lesson that I talk about.
Have you got that? Do you cover this in your book?
What I've done in the book is I tried to explore this so that we can have more conversations around what's happening with relational aggression and status hierarchies.
Yeah.
But I just touched on things that the evidence base show can be incredibly good for our young people, and that can also move them towards horizontal relationships. And so I mention attachment style and talk about the difference between insecure attachment and secure attachment.
Now, when you say attachment, sorry, because you brought this up a second ago, I didn't want to interrupt you. Attachment to what?
So attachment to another human being.
Okay.
So this is based on attachment theory, which started with John Bowlby. There's been a massive body of literature around it, which shows that your templates for how you interact with other people come from your experiences with some of your earlier carers. And there's some indication that if you're engaging in relational aggression, that you may be what they refer to as perhaps a little bit avoidantly attached, which means that you can be around people, but you're not really closely attached to them, which makes sense because if you move them around like pawns in a game for your own elevation, you sort of, you've got a different kind of experience of what a relationship can look like.
Yeah.
That's if you're engaging in bullying. So there's some suggestion that something happens with attachment style, not making mistakes. So we really need to clearly differentiate between making mistakes as an adolescent, where they're all going to do an experiment, versus actually harming another person on purpose so that you can be elevated at their expense.
I mean, I was going to say it's off topic. It's not off topic, but it's a little bit of a different view. Just coming back to teen girls today, we were talking about this last night about how between social media, reality shows, the housewives of New York and Beverly Hills and all that, it's somewhat glamorized, this bitchiness between women. It's made like you get memes of it. You get sort of like, this is the attitude I've got. Is that demonstrating to young girls today? Is that getting into the psyche of young girls as well, that this is the kind of behavior I should be having with my friends?
Yes. So there's, I know that we've talked about if you're perpetrating it, how harmful it can be to engage in that behavior. And I know that we've talked about if you're a target of it, how harmful that is, but also to be a bystander. And so if we think about that, when we're absorbing all this information from social media, it starts to normalise again that these external markers are actually what's success. So, having more money, getting more accolades, having more followers, all that kind of thing starts to become really, really important. And when you observe other people engaging in that and then getting a reward, it starts to become, it changes your neural pathways, where it starts to become a repertoire of what's possible. And you've seen it, and maybe you can experiment with it. And maybe if you see anybody else do it, it's acceptable and okay, because I've seen this many times before. And isn't this just something that we just do?
Yeah.
And so, I have actually read literature around that it really is problematic, these, in some of the reality TV shows, and how people, have a really kind of different relationship to what I think relationships are meant to be.
So is there a solution here?
Well, I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful. And that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I think that, first of all, if we deconstruct status popularity, so there's two different kinds of popularity, status popularity and likable popularity. And likable popularity is about meaningful popularity. It's about, walking as companions with other people. So if we start to actually deconstruct that with our young people, so I want more of those conversations happening, because I think that sometimes we do put certain people on pedestals, and we need to challenge why we do that. And so deconstructing an excessive focus on status. There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of it, but we're talking about when it becomes quite excessive. Right. So that's part of it, so that people can start to change their story. So if they're at the bottom, they're not actually automatically believing that, they're understanding what's happening in the social process. but
Yeah.
also teaching people about self-compassion, teaching people about real connection, which we started to touch on with attachment style, teaching people about using their signature strengths. So Martin Seligman's positive psychology work talks a lot about, we've got 24 signature strengths, and using the top 4 or 5 of those in really creative and fluid ways results in people doing amazing things. But everybody's got strengths. So nobody's better than everyone. We've got different strength sets and valuing everybody's strength sets. So signature strengths, gratitude, because positive emotions is really connecting. So teaching young people how to be really grateful and how to be grateful about, about friendships as well is a connector. Interconnectedness, understanding that for us to be here today, there had to have been maybe 20 people doing their job to help us. Like that separation, we're not that separated from other people, and really respecting and hooking into that. So there's quite a lot of things that we can do. A lot of conversations, a lot of strategies, and it's something that I feel really passionate about, and that I'm looking forward to being maybe the next stage of my life.
Yeah, I love it. Your book, The Popular Girls, Helping Your Daughter with Adolescent Power Struggles.
It's being lauded by all sorts of different people. You got a great review. This book may very well be the best book I have read about understanding adolescent girl psychology and how it affects behaviour, well-being, and friendships. I mean, it's fantastic. Can't wait to get a hand on it.
Thank you.
And read it.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that has happened for me that has been so rewarding is that I've had the opportunity to meet some amazing thought leaders, and so I just feel so grateful for knowing them and for their support that's come in places that I didn't expect. I live in a small town. Nobody knows me, and yet to feel so embraced by a community of people that are working in this space has just been amazing.
Oh gosh, Mary, I feel like we've just scratched the surface on all the information that you have and all the research that you've done. So grateful to you for the work that you're doing, because I feel it, just even talking to you, not only is my mind already spinning about, thinking about how I parented and also how I was parented. And, it goes both ways. It's sort of understanding myself better, because I look back at myself as a teen girl as you're talking, like, oh, of course that affected me. And of course that's why I am the way I am today. And so it's just a beautiful full circle that you've got there within your book and the research that you're doing. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us in the bathroom.
It has been my pleasure, and I'm very grateful to be in the bathroom.
Now you get to take it out to the rest of the house and the neighbourhood. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. How are you feeling?
As I said to Mary, my brain is actually exploding right now, because I look back on my parenting a lot. I think about, where did I, in my most well-meaning parental role, but where did I make mistakes? Could I have done something different? And I'm already seeing places with thinking about our two daughters where I go, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, but they are mistakes. They're mistakes.
I know. I'm not. I don't feel guilty.
Yeah,
I'm just
good.
thinking about them because it's important. I like to understand where I've come from, so I don't continue to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
So, and I know I was, doing the absolute best I can as a mum. Though hearing that, it's like, right, okay, how to support in a way that feels relaxed and loving and without responsibility for the child, and just have them stand within themselves at peace, feeling that love. So yeah, there was a lot in there. And of course I'm, reminiscing about my own teenage
Yeah, of
as
course.
well. And it's so impactful, our teen years. It really creates a lot of who we are today. So
yeah, I'm sure our listener as well is, might be walking on a track around a dam right now, listening to the podcast or in the car. And we're all teenagers. We've all been through our version of it, or we have teenagers who we're watching and observing going through it, and we want to support them in the best way we possibly can. Yeah, that's intense because, like you said, they're big years. They're very influential years, and they do impact us. Like you mentioned that there's women that have reached out to you and said, "I still am affected by that, by being ostracized."
Not just reached out. My friends of mine, like dear friends of mine, that will still cry today about. I remember when I was ousted from this group with no reason why. Like, why did this even happen? And how she can still cry about it today, So, yeah, it's extremely impactful. So I'm really excited to read this book. Really excited. She was so lovely. What a generous person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's more to, as she said, there's more to unpack, and
yeah. Well, look, she's self-published, so we can order the book from her website, and there'll be places to get it in the show notes. So yeah, if you're out
Dr.
there, do
Mary
yourself
Kaspar.
a favor. Yep.
Ooh, be kind to yourself, self-compassion.
Yeah, that's always a big one,
right? Because. And I'm thinking that to myself when you're talking about the mistakes you made as a parent, and it's like, I'm probably made 20 times the mistakes you made. And it's so don't beat yourself up about it because you can't change it. So it's like, what are you going to do next time when you get another take at it?
Yeah.
How are you going to be?
Yeah.
What do you want? And when she keeps coming back to gratitude.
That's right. It seems to be the basis of just everything. Change is based on gratitude. Change for the better is like, if you can get to the gratitude of something, it can elevate everything.
I think we should leave it there because I want that to be the last thought. Be grateful.
Thanks for listening.